Alrighty, welcome back to the Bucket Bros. Uh, I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and a Happy New Year. And if there's anything I missed, I apologize and I'll put it in the name jar. I hope you guys are feeling fantastic. It's 2025. I'm Ronnie. I got it right. That's Bobby. And we are welcoming you guys in to the newest episode. Bobby, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Hey everybody, Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us again for another episode of the Bucket Bros. And yeah, I think we got some great content for you here today. A lot of energy, a lot of rambling. I hope you
A
guys
lot, yeah.
yeah. I hope you're making a cross country drive right now because we are gonna fill some time for you.
Yeah, and hopefully it makes sense and is coherent enough. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the 13 hours of basketball that we tried to coordinate and get posted for you last week. We unfortunately weren't able to do one just because we were both busy with family and everything. So we're happy to be back, happy to talk some basketball. It's been fun, at least for me, kind of watching the Wolves go on a mini win streak and now kind of coming back to earth playing obviously one of the best teams, the Thunder. But there's lots to get into. Obviously, I'm already rambling in the open, but let's go start some fast break news unless you got anything.
No, don't worry. I'm gonna be talking a lot more.
All right.
Oh, I got a
Well,
lot to say. Don't you guys worry.
all right. Well, let's get into some fast break news. Here we go. All right, let's get into some fast break news. It has been quite a tumultuous last week or so since we've been on the air. Um, I'm not sure which story you want to start with first. We got a trade and a firing. Which one do you want, Bobby? Which one are you going for?
Let's start with
Which
the
one's
good news first.
all right? The trade. I should have said the firing. So D'Angelo Russell is headed back to Brooklyn. The Lakers and Nets have made a trade. Bobby, do you have the details on that? It might take me a minute to bring it up.
Yeah. So just real quick in paragraph form, the Lakers traded D'Angelo Russell and Maxwell Lewis and 3 second-round picks. That was it's like a Golden State special there. Just round up the second-round picks to the Nets for Dorian Finney-Smith and Shake Milton. So that's essentially all the details of the trade there. And yeah, I mean, for a while now, I mean, it's been very clear that D'Angelo Russell has not been the best fit for the Lakers. It's I guess it's been nice to have him be like a secondary ball handler, and when his shots there, when he's on fire, I mean, he's been absolutely spectacular for them and help him string together a bunch of wins. But that's I mean, he literally has to be playing uh, his best ball, and that is being like an off ball shooter to some degree, and then the secondary ball handling when LeBron's not on the court. But I mean, aside from that, he hasn't really added to them winning that much. And so, the type of money that he was making, I don't have the exact number off in front of me, but I know it was like mid high 20s a year, which I believe is on the last year of that contract now. Almost the contract that Dennis Schroeder got, but um, yeah, heading back to New York, and with that, the Lakers get two pieces that I think work very very well for their team. Dorian Finney-Smith has been in trade talks for a while now, basically ever since he got to the Nets from the Mavs, which was 2 years ago. Yeah, everybody's been saying who's going to grab Dorian Finney-Smith, who's going to grab Dorian Finney-Smith. He to the point where I mean, at this point, he's almost become like an afterthought. But yeah, I mean, no, the guy's still like a solid wing 3-and-D type player, and then Shake Milton adds quite a bit of a punch too in that regard, and it gives him depth at the most premium position in the league, and certainly types of players that are going to work well around LeBron. I mean, it's been no secret that this team should have, or any LeBron team really should have, guys who can play defense and guys who can shoot the ball, because typically a LeBron-led team the other players don't have to do much else, right? He kind of controlled the rest of the burden there. So yeah, I think great move for the Lakers. They got off of a very difficult to move contract. They had to spend 3 second round picks to do it, but yeah, no, overall, I think it was very smart move.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I having excuse me, having watched the Nets, and again, this is another one of your calls. You've been talking about how the Nets were going to disassemble that team for the last 6 weeks. And as they tumble down the standings, having lost the last three, they're now 12 and 21 in the standings. Um, and yeah, like you said, it's such a smart move for the Lakers, kind of trading away, like you said, a bench player that's not really impacting the games the way that we may have wanted him to do that, having been again, I have to selfishly bring it back to me. Having him been a former Wolf, and it was kind of the same kind of issues that he kind of had with Cat, even though they were like best friends, still kind of those issues. So, and like you said, giving up those 3 second round picks, they're getting back this value. To me, Finney Smith is one of those guys. Do they put him in the starting lineup? I don't know, but I think it's to me he brings something that Russell just they moved Russell to the bench, and so having Smith and Shake Milton just kind of like you said, energy guys that can fit into the role a little bit better than Russell could. So yeah, good job on the Lakers staff for kind of playing chess and getting this one done. And we'll see kind of what else pans out. And that kind of leads us. Unless you do, you have any more thoughts on this trade?
No, I mean, I actually think that you made a really good point, very briefly, about whether or not Dorian Finney-Smith is going to start. I certainly wouldn't think of Shake Milton as starting for this team, but because recently, I mean, you're calling D'Angelo Russell a bench player, but he has started a vast majority of the games that he's
Oh,
played for the Lakers, and it's only recently that he's had to come off the bench just because they found that. What do you know? Again, a lengthy, energetic guy who plays defense and then shoots threes is going to do better in LeBron lineups than not. So do they keep Max Christie in that spot, or do they give it the nod to the vet? That's to be determined. I would be surprised if that lineup gets sort of shuffled around a little bit. Maybe even shoot if Max Christie continues to play well, maybe even Dorian Finney-Smith instead of Rui Hachimura. Let's see.
that's kind of my. I wasn't he. Those two are. I feel like whether they're good fits to kind of fill each other's shoes or to kind of have them both on the floor, that might be a little too much. But again, like you said, I think they're good fits with LeBron. It kind of works out for them. And 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 I'm definitely not sliding D'Angelo Russell. I think this is going to be a great move for him individually. I think being on this team that's kind of who knows what other moves they're going to make, but and he might again it gives him a chance to shine for however many games he's going to be in Brooklyn before they might ship him for more second round picks.
Yeah, he's got his
So
starting role back. I'm pretty sure.
yeah, so he's definitely going to get some playing time, which if you're an NBA player, that's a good thing. So I think maybe mentally leaving this might be a win-win for everybody that's involved. Just because it frees up cap space and whatever they need to do in Brooklyn, gives Russell playing time and it gives the Lakers some pieces. So this is the kind of things
Yeah.
that you kind of hope across the NBA that everybody kind of wins from this situation, player and organization wise.
No, well
But
said. The Sam Cassell hierarchy of needs for NBA players: minutes, money, rings, in that order.
yeah, yeah,
Sorry,
that nails it.
as you were gonna say, were you
No,
about to
no, I
segue to
was
our next?
yes, I was transitioning and I was hoping that there was that Sam Cassell had played it in Sacramento, but I'm pretty sure he didn't. But that's where we're headed up to in Cali. Uh, Mike Brown was fired by the Kings. It came after a 5 game losing streak, and as a disgruntled uh, Nuggets coach, Mike Malone let everybody know. Mike Brown was in his car on the way to the airport to the next game when they decided to give him a call and fire him. And this was after he had done all of his had done practice that morning and had done his press conference. And then as he left the facility and got in his car, that is when they decided to release him of his duties instead of doing it while they were in house. And granted, I'm maybe furthering the speculation if that was those are all unconfirmed. That's coming out of the Nuggets head coach. I can't say if that's true or not, but even so, and he also said that he was fired by the same person as well. So obviously
Right.
there is some bitterness that goes along with that. Um, but honestly, I see that the Kings are down in the standings, but like I had mentioned before, and a team I'm going to mention later on, like they were in every game. I feel like they're 14 and 19, um, and but they're a plus. Their differential is a plus 1.1, so they're definitely one of those scrappy teams that's always in it. There was some talks behind the scene. It was kind of stemmed from Mike Brown asking DeMar DeRozan to come off the bench, which led me to send you a, a funny Instagram meme, which I'm not sure if you saw it or not, but it uh, DeMar DeRozan's one of the only people to get
Oh yeah.
two Coach of the Year award winners fired the following year. So it's just one of those funny trends that happens. But what are your thoughts and takeaways from the Sacramento situation?
No, I mean, I think you summed it up pretty well. It was kind of interesting to hear Malone comment on the firing and feeling like it was a little unprofessional. Yeah, anytime a team is sliding, it's the easiest thing to do is to blame the coach. It's like the easiest correction to make. I certainly think it's a little bit more of a personnel issue. The I question, just like many people question the fit of DeMar DeRozan on this team. It kind of felt like they made the big move for the wrong guy because they were already a good offensive team, and they didn't need a guy who didn't really quite fit their. It's like you don't just take any guy who has labeled as a good offensive player and stick it into your scheme and hope for the best. It's if he doesn't fit, he doesn't fit. And yeah, I mean, I think he just doesn't bring any positive to their team. Not to say that he can't still, fill it up and score in bunches, just like he has consistently throughout his entire career. But yeah, if it's like a run and gun type team who just really needed more defense at his position, then I don't think it matters who's coaching. I don't suspect Doug Christie's gonna come out on the other side, much better than Mike Brown did. So um, yeah, I mean, I have certainly been rooting for the Sacramento Kings and their recent success because it's a fun story, and it's you even if they're not like my team, it's always fun to see a franchise sort of go against the grain their uh, of their less fortunate past, and at least for a little bit, I'll root for them for a little bit. If they become too successful, then I hate them. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I do not foresee them. I mean, even if they get themselves into playing contention, I just do not consider them a legitimate playoff threat this year.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I've mentioned it before. They're a really fun team to watch. I love De'Aaron Fox. He's probably one of my top five players in the NBA right now.
Yeah,
Um,
you've been on the Darren Fox train for a while. I was
oh, since
actually, I
Kentucky,
was
since
out.
Kentucky.
I was questioning that. I got to give you your flowers, and then he just absolutely exploded a couple of years ago. When they had their big run, and yeah, and not only that, but looked great in the playoffs before he broke his finger, and seemed to really take on the moment. I mean, heck, he won the first Jerry West Clutch Player of the Year award. That was truly a big De'Aaron Fox season. But sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But yeah, the progression of De'Aaron Fox throughout his career. I think we've kind of seen the best of that. May have been his best season that he's going to have. You can kind of debate that, but yeah, I mean, I think he could be a good piece, maybe not a number one, but a really good piece on a winning team. And yeah, just got to put the right personnel around him. Otherwise, you're not going to see it.
Unfortunately, I feel that's the case with all of the Sacramento stars, like Sabonis, Monk, Aaron, DeRozan. I don't feel any of them are a true number one. They're all very good, like number two or three that goes along with somebody else that's a superstar, and they just don't have it. Like, but like I said, they're a fun team to watch. I just don't think it could be a coach. Like they just need to find the right person to come in there and find the chemistry. And for whatever reason, the the organization thought that it wasn't Mike Brown. And I think he was trying. There was other stuff that I started hearing where he took out De'Aaron Fox and his wife so that he could had a big talk with them so that they could be on the same understanding that if he needed to call out somebody, he could call him out, which in essence would hopefully get other people to kind of fall in line. I think that's kind of the start of the ruffling of the feathers because I think it was more directed at DeRozan to kind of do certain things, and obviously he's got sway within the front office. So it's definitely a curious thing to see how this all shakes out the rest of the year. Obviously, I don't, like you said, I wouldn't see them being any more than a play-in team, kind of the same way that they were last year, where they kind of maybe get in the 8, 9, 10 seed. Like it's not, but once they're in, it's like they're not a threat by any
Yeah.
means. So
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad saying that. I just don't see them as a team that could even win a playoff series. But that's just kind of that's just kind of where they've been coasting these past few years. And if you're not making upward progress, you tend to see teams sort of like level off, almost as if they sort of like lose motivation. But in particular, if other parts of the NBA are progressing, as in the West just keeps getting deeper and deeper, then that's what you're going to see. But I hate to stray from the coaching thing too much. I did maybe hear that Mike Brown was perhaps starting to ruffle some feathers. I don't know how true that really is, but another thing I wanted to bring up is the this just this just like recurrent pattern of coaches who are Mike Brown is a good example of just a coach who has made a name for himself. Certainly deserves a big contract, but gets the big contract and then gets fired early on in the contract. I mean, he has next year and the following year that he's going to be paid out at about $8 million a year. I mean, I guess the coaching salary doesn't hit against the cap sheet, but still, I mean, that's a lot. That's like a mid-level salary just out the door each year that these teams are owing. And we've been seeing this pattern quite a bit lately. I'm blanking on names, but the Detroit
it
coach
happens.
who,
I would say it happens across all sports. I think owners and front offices get too impatient, or they think that they're smarter than everybody else, that they're going to be able to flick the switch in 2 years and be in the playoffs, which happens maybe 30 to 40% of the time. But it's not the sport that we cover. But you look at the Detroit Lions and Dan Campbell, like his first year and a half, 2 years, he had only won like 4 games and was struggling, but he had to get his culture, his people, his kind of rhythm, his routines in place for everybody to be able to kind of move forward. And owners and stuff, they just get too impatient, and if they don't see something working, it's like, nope, you're gone. And instead of kind of letting something matriculate, let a draft pick work their way through the G League and up, that this guy was his first draft pick. Like it's like how many picks of Mike Brown's I don't know, how long was he there for? Like you said, if he was only there for 2 years, any draft pick he made might not be really involved in anything that's going on. So it's nuts of how these things are all money driven, but it's and results based. But sometimes even when there is not the worst results, they're still axed. So it's the nature of the beast.
yeah, no, I just wonder if this is a problem that we're gonna have to worry about moving forward. I mean, I guess it's a good thing for NBA coaches that it's becoming increasingly competitive, especially over the last few years. And you're seeing guys get like really big contract. I mean, coaches right now, NBA coaches, especially the ones signing big contracts, are getting paid more than they've ever been paid, and it's not even close. They're getting paid
All
like
contracts are going
players
up.
now.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say it's if they're being paid like players, then it makes sense that they're being cut and released and just like a player. So
yeah,
to me, it makes sense business wise. But to me, if you're an owner if you want to believe in somebody, I get it. Like if you're not seeing the results that you want to see in house, that maybe everybody else on the outside isn't seeing, then yeah, I get it. But for most things, you're not going to have a 1 year flip turnaround where someone's going to magically
Right.
put some dust on the same players from the year before to all of a sudden be this completely different team. So it's like look
Yeah.
at the Cavs.
Yeah. I
Like,
mean, right. Yeah, no, I mean, I certainly don't consider myself like a Kings insider, but it's just interesting. I wonder if we're going to see sometime in the near future a shift of the tides because a handful of teams now are just sitting on dead money with coaches that they've hired and very quickly fired that are making really decent money. So just curious, just food for thought.
yep. I've got actually, I've got two more things for fast break news. The first, it's a quick little fun tidbit. Um, we have to give our flowers to a Mr. Draymond Green because he passed Larry Bird in most three-pointers made over this last week, which is pretty ridiculous when you see his shooting form. So it if it doesn't show you the state of the league that a
Yeah,
power
yeah.
forward has now more three-pointers than one of the best three-point shooters of all time. So it's nuts to think about. Staying on that, as far as three-pointers go, um, our two fair cities managed to repeat themselves and tie the most missed three-pointers again. The Bobcats. Oh my goodness, the, the
Mhm.
Charlotte Hornets and the Chicago
They might as
Bulls
well go back to
missed.
being the Bobcats. It's about where they're
Yeah,
at right now.
they missed 75 three-pointers for the second time this season. It's only January 1st. Happy New Year, everybody. So yeah, that's it. I don't know. It's one of those things. Um, I've got a great audio clip I want to share with you about three-pointers. I don't know if this is the correct moment to do it, but do you have any thoughts on this Charlotte Bulls 150 misses in 2 games?
Absolutely wild stat. The current style of play, the way it's evolving, when it's when it's when it's done well, when it's at its best, it's incredibly fun to watch. The ball's moving, the players are moving. You get a lot of great plays at the rim, and then you also just get a lot of guys who are making not easy shots, right? I don't want to say they're all tough shots, but I mean, an NBA three-pointer, let's just go ahead and say not an easy shot. There's a reason that we consider somebody who makes less than half of them to be elite. Um, and a lot of these guys who are consistently shooting 40% are because they're the guys who get open because they're not the primary ball handlers on the team who are drawing the double, and so they're just kicking it from the corner and able to shoot at same percentage as Clay Thompson, who but without having to create for themselves. So we're seeing like an escalation in that, but then we're also going to see just these bad teams who don't really have another track to win. I actually do think so I think the way the Bulls are playing this year with the I think they're playing to their team strengths, and when they're doing it well, they look good, and they upset teams. That's why they upset the Celtics in the game that they played against them, is just because they can score in bunches and they can beat you up because virtually everybody on that team is a floor spacer. So they are 100% playing to their strengths. What you're seeing is the outcome of what the ceiling of this team actually is, which is a sub 500 team who is a play-in hopeful, who needs to be selling their their best players as quickly as the Nets are right now. But when you get actual good teams who are playing against each other um, and playing the style appropriately, then it's a great product. It looks amazing. So I think what we'll see, just this season, maybe even the past couple seasons, we've been seeing this dramatic increase in the amount of three pointers being shot across the board, and I think over time it's eventually going to level out because you'll just see that teams will realize, like, well, this doesn't work for everybody. It's not a winning recipe across the board. It's not great for the fans, and you'll see like a modification of the style that's being played eventually. So, I mean, until I don't know when that eventually is going to be, but I think eventually we will see teams who are going to say, this is just not working. It's not worth it. It's not generating anything good in any fashion for anyone involved. So let's actually try to play some real basketball. And then for the record, there are plenty of teams who are not shooting a lot of 3-pointers that are dominating as well. So it's not a one size fits all. But right now it does feel like a one size fits most. That's my spiel on that.
That's fine. I was hoping you wouldn't have said that last little bit because it would have led in perfectly to this audio clip that I'm going to end the segment with. So I know it's probably going to you're going to yell at me during the break because it's going to get some things going. But you made a comment that kind of jumped out at me before I play this, is that when you were talking about how most guys on the floor are floor spacers. To me, if you're if all you have is floor spacers and you have nobody that's creating, because I think that's what people are hoping to find when they watch basketball. I think that's what people feel that is being lost, is that creation, the ability to kind of drive, kick, like do different things. It's there, but I think the pull up quick three is kind of overtaking a lot of it. So I think that's why the numbers are going up so much higher. But let me play this clip about the 3-pointer from somebody you're very fond of. Hopefully I can play it through my audio and this doesn't screw up.
Game one, Michael Jordan put on a 3-point shooting exhibition and a stunning performance, but taking too many threes can hurt his overall performance, according to Michael.
My 3-point shooting is something that I don't want to excel at because it takes away from all phases of my game. My game is a fake drive to the hole, penetrate, dish off, dunk or whatever. And when you have that mentality, as I found out in the first game, of making threes, you don't go to the hole as much. You go to the 3-point line and you start sitting there waiting for someone to find you. And that's not my mentality. And I don't want to create that because it takes away from my other parts of my game.
I mean, to be fair, that clip, that interview, mic drop, very nice. For those who are listening, Ronnie just performed a mic drop. I feel like he feels like he's made his case in point. No, I don't want to spoil your mic drop now.
No, and we'll see how much of this we keep in. And I understand he is Michael Jordan, and like the only person that can really say is LeBron James right now, because people respect him. You're looking at him differently. Like he's not BJ Armstrong. He's a different player, but he is talking about the way that his skill set works with the 3-pointer. And I feel, watching Anthony Edwards, I feel like he might be losing some of that MJ feel because he's taking a lot of 3-pointers and not being so dominant at the hole, which is what everybody wants. And I think that there's a lot of other players that are like that are, like he said, just kind of pulling up, waiting for somebody to throw them the ball rather than like diving in towards the hoop, crashing the boards, whatever it might be. And in the other stat that I saw, that I think they said, what was it? I'm forgetting the year, but I'm going to say like the 2015 Wolves were the worst box out team. And they had like 25 box outs a game. The number one team in box out this year has 9 box outs a game. So it just shows you that like the game isn't the same, obviously. It's not as fun to watch in some parts. Granted, I love watching the basketball that we're watching, but to me, it's, if the regular fan is going to pull up on like a Sunday afternoon to watch a game, it's like, what is all of this? Like, it's a different game than it was that even from a few years ago. So I understand it. Michael's different, but I think it was very, very telling and very much of how I feel all players should be. You don't want to be a floor spacer. You want to be a creator. You want to be somebody who's doing more than just walking out to the 3-point line and doing this. So.
No. Yeah, well, yeah, we could leave it at that. That was, I mean, that question was asked in the 90s and answered in the 90s. So it's, I don't know. It's really tough to extrapolate it on today's game. I think there's a lesson to be learned there for sure. But yeah, I mean, and to to go off of what you were saying about creators, there's more than one way to create. But if you have too many ball dominant creators, you're also not going to have a very good team. I mean, just even the Trey Young DeJounte Murray experiment was an absolute failure. They picked him up and then had to trade him off and lose a little bit of value on what they spent to get him, just to get off that contract. I mean, I thought it was a great move for the Pelicans, to be fair, who unfortunately have succumbed to many, many injuries and are now just going to try to get a high draft pick at this point in their season. But so it's not working out for different reasons in their case. But yeah, I mean, for the Hawks, it was two guys who are fairly ball dominant, different styles, but just didn't work well together. Even though they were different players, just doesn't work well together. So you got to be careful, because if you have somebody who has a really strong orbit, if you have a Luka Doncic on your team, then why would you need other creators? I mean, maybe you need one other. I think every team probably needs at least a couple, but why do you need other creators? You have somebody who can literally have the ball in their hands the whole time, and it works. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would just hesitate to throw that blanket on everybody.
Don't the Mavs have probably the best creator on that team?
Yeah, of course, and I and that's why they're playing even better. But it's not like they have. It's not like that's what that team is built on. Is like a bunch of creators. No, it's like they have their 1A and their 1B, and then everybody else is waiting for those people to give them the ball or let those guys do their thing and score. And that's it. It actually, it can be a little monotonous when you're watching regular season Mavs games. Works really well in the playoffs, but when you're watching regular season Mavs games, it can be a little bit monotonous. But no, it's yeah. I mean, not every team needs a bunch of creators, because that can actually cause more congestion.
No, I think you nailed it on the head right there. As far as like the regular fan comes in not wanting to watch playoff. Well, they do, but not during the regular season. That like the maximizing the most out of every single possession like they do in the playoffs. I feel like that wouldn't play. It'd play even worse now. Like ratings are going down already. I feel like that would probably make it even worse if it was even more like critiqued and I don't know. Maybe we're just rambling, obviously, but I think the biggest thing that I took away from his comments was just he kind of foresaw the standing at the 3-point line. Like you said, that was something that he said in the 90s that is happening here in 2025. So it's funny how he was how smart of a smart how I can't even think of the super words, how much of a scholar on the game that he is, where he's able to realize and be such a genius on this stuff. So
yeah. I'm biting my tongue on this one a little bit, but that does kind of make me. It does make me want to bring up. I have long thought. Obviously, I have long thought about how much Mike would just eat it up in this era. Just how much extra space he would have. I think he would succumb. I think he would give in and end up shooting a lot more 3-pointers. And I think he would be pretty good at it too. But no, I think he would excel extraordinarily in this era, just because he would be able to go down the lane. Nobody can arm bar him.
I was gonna say, there's no hand
do whatever he wants. Yeah. Yeah, he would be able to get away with so much. All the palming that he would be able to get away with of the ball, or sorry, the carrying of the ball. I mean, I think he kind of did that anyway because he could palm it so easily. But
honestly,
he kept his hand over the ball, so he wouldn't know.
I think that in itself just kind of proves his point from back then. I think he's going to be going towards the hole much more. Like, yes, the 3 is going to open up opportunities, but his driving and penetrating and no one being able to stop him being able to maneuver and get in the lane, he's essentially like, he'd have crazy Jokic type numbers. And because of his ability to get in and penetrate and pass and find guys or go to the hoop, he'd be at the hoop for the rebounds. So yeah, I totally agree with you that he would crush it. I still think he would probably only shoot 10 to 12 threes a game. I don't think he's going to be shooting 20 in a game.
I don't even think he would shoot that many. No, I'd put him in more like a 5 or 6, and maybe 8 tops.
I'm going off of that from that clip. It said that he went like 5 or 6 for 10. And so that's why there was like 10 3-point shots in a game that was a lot for him back then. So that's what I'm saying. I think now, and that's the thing, he did utilize it, but it wasn't something that was a cornerstone. And obviously he's Michael Jordan. Of course he'd be able to hit threes and like do that if he wanted to, just pull up in the corner and just sit there and be Robert Horry. But no, he's Michael. So I think, and that's how I would hope most people would play, is in that fashion instead of like waiting for somebody else to get them the ball in the corner. But I understand that it pays a check, and you do that and you can make $30 million. So I get it. Let's move on. All right, well, let's take a look at the NBA rookies so far this year. I am jumping on to the NBA.com Kia rookie ladder. You can go find this on NBA.com. And we were just looking this over and talking about it. And one of the names that we're going to start at the bottom, one of the names that kind of surprised us, that not so much fallen, I guess it says here he wasn't on the list last week, but Dalton Connect makes the top 10 list of the tracking, I guess, for the best rookie so far. Number 9, I better make sure I've got cash on me somewhere. AJ Mitchell of the Oklahoma City Thunder is number 9. Right now he's got 6.2 points per game, 2 rebounds, and 1.7 assists. And he was the 38th pick by the Thunder. Obviously their team's loaded, so not probably he's getting minutes, so that's good for him. Number 8 is Bub Carrington of the Wizards. We had just both said that we haven't been actively watching Wizard games, unfortunately, but maybe we need to start, and we'll highlight them next week. We'll see.
Because they have 2 people on this list.
Yes, they do.
And they're not the only team who has 2 players on this list. Now, It's not surprising when you have a last place team, with a couple players on this list, because obviously they're the ones getting the high draft picks and who are getting the big playing time. But as you make your way up, I think you're going to be surprised by another team who's not at all low in the standings, who's got 2 players on this list. No,
you're absolutely right. So aside from Dalton Connect, the next player that I've actually seen play on this list is Tristan Da Silva of the Magic. He's got 8.8 points a game. He was the number 18th pick in the draft. Looks like he just had a big game against the Nets, scoring 21 points and 6 boards and 7 assists. So obviously getting some more playing time, like we had mentioned with the Magic, it's become the Jalen Suggs show. So, but there's a lot more guys that are coming out there. Obviously, my guy Goga Batase is becoming a dominant center. And I didn't realize, and I'm sure if you think back, a lot of you, if you're true basketball fans, if you go back and you remember the Zion draft, and if you remember that there was this picture where there was a crowd of people around Zion's like little press spot, and right next to him there was a booth that was completely empty and no one was there, and that was Mr. Batase's booth. And somebody was mentioned, like, frame that, put that up in your living room or your bedroom where you see that every day, that no one respected you. And he's playing like it. He's been playing unbelievable. But it's not about him. This is about the rookies. I apologize. I'm getting distracted. Number 6 is another name I'm probably going to have to put money in the jar. I'm going to call him Zach Reisar. I always.
You haven't heard this name spoken? How many times have you heard this name spoken? All right, put it
only by you.
Only by you. Zachary Rizashay. Zachary Rizashay. Nobody should ever watch the draft. That's like going to a high school graduation where you don't know anybody. Sorry, that's a Bill Burr joke recycled, but it's hilarious.
Yeah. I had a Bill Burr joke about you.
You could just look at the whole list the next day. You don't actually have to watch it.
Yeah.
The list is going to happen the way the list happens, whether or not you're paying attention.
That's true. And then we get into what you were talking about. Number 5, Jalen Wells of the Memphis Grizzlies. He's averaging 11 points a game and 3 boards and almost 2 assists. And yeah, he's obviously contributing. So that's one of those. And I got to pay attention. I definitely have seen the name. To me, there's so many Grizzlies and Thunder role players that I really want to get into just because both of those teams are so deep. And I feel like I need to kind of take the time and watch each one of these players. Another guy, when I actually was paying attention and looking into one of these players and watching the Spurs play, and this is one of those where I'm going to have where Steph Curry's got me. Is it Stephen Castle? I don't know the proper.
I believe it's Stefan. I think he goes. Yeah.
Okay,
I think he goes.
Mr. Curry's thrown me off with all of the different cadences of how to say this name.
Yeah, he wants us to enunciate the O. I think Stefan Castle.
Half of Area 51. He is an amazing defender. Every game that I've watched, he's usually tried to lock up on the top offensive player. So yeah, I'm a big fan of his. Obviously,
I feel like he's your type of player.
Oh yeah, if you play defense, I'm all aboard, and if you manage to scrape some 10 to 12 points, then yeah, I'm all about.
Even just like a ball handling athletic guy. I mean, he's like another De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah,
that's true. Right in your wheelhouse. Although credit to him. I mean, he is a really fun player to watch. He is so comfortable with the ball and making decisions in traffic. For a young guy, I mean, I hope he continues to work on the rest of his game, because if he can round out a few things, he has like a really good baseline skill set to work off of that could get him some real playing time and playing for a good team, starting for a good team rather for a long time. So hey, this could be a really exciting pairing with Wemby.
Well, look at other guards that are his size in the past. To me, he kind of fits he's a little smaller than Kawhi, but I feel like that system, just being able, I know Pop's not there right now, and granted it's Pop's system that's kind of in place that he's using. And I think, yeah, like you said, if he can kind of work on a few things, man, he's one of those, when you're watching the game, he just kind of jumps out and he's fun to watch. Like you said, it's one of those, you're just like, ooh, who is that guy? It's just
he makes it look incredibly easy. He makes it look incredibly easy.
Make sure you watch the Spurs game. Next one up, number 3, is one of your preseason. It is your oh gosh. Number 3 is one of your preseason picks, and our second Grizzly on the list, Mr. Zach Edey, who is also averaging 11 points a game, 8 boards, and 1.2 blocks. He's come on since coming back from the injury at the start of the season and has really been playing well. I've only seen him maybe in sparing minutes against the Timberwolves. Otherwise, I don't think I've actually watched any Grizzlies games in the last week and a half. Do you have any thoughts on Edey?
Oh yeah. No, I didn't want to interrupt every single rookie you mentioned, but yeah, no, I mean, you said he's looking a lot more comfortable, less bothered by guys. He's actually starting to rack up the double doubles. I mean, granted, some of his bigger games have come against lesser teams, but you play the teams that are in front of you, right? I mean, this Grizzlies team, they obviously have a good history of hitting on their young talent, just not just the draft picks, but then seemingly to cultivate it. And so that's by having this sort of like gap year that was semi-forced, semi because of injury. Unfortunately, it's allowed them to just reset and put themselves in a really good position with a team that's got, as you said, a ton of depth at basically, every age group. I mean, I guess there's not really any true like
They're all
older
young.
veterans on that team, but yeah, they're all young. But from their most veteran player down to the rookies, they're just everybody's contributing, and they are a lot of fun to watch.
Yep. Number 2 is our second Wizard, and I believe the number 2 pick in the draft, Alexander Sarr.
Mm-hmm.
So he's at 11 points a game, 6 rebounds, almost 2 blocks. And again, I can't really say much because I have almost 0 to none. I think I've seen his highlights, and I think he's got potential. Obviously, he's doing well. Obviously, the Wizards aren't, so that's obviously going to be an issue. But yeah, have you been able to catch any of his games, or at least see him play maybe in the early parts of the season?
Not as much as I'd like, but I mean, he is he has been shooting the ball a little bit better. That's probably the big concern is will he be able to develop enough of an offensive game at this level to actually be a contributor long term. I mean, if you watch him play, you watch him move, it's scary how athletic he is at 7 feet, like a legit 7 feet. And and that's why he went number 2. That's why the Wizards, rolled the dice on him, in spite of some of his shortcomings. Is just because if he even develops a relevant offensive game, he's one of those guys who you can anchor an entire defense around him. With enough coaching. I don't know if the instincts are necessarily quite there, but yeah, that's definitely his skill set. So yeah, I mean, good on him. He's it looks like he's been getting his nose to the grind because he's starting to pop more and more as the season goes on.
I'm reading his stats. It's one of those where the month of December he has made a drastic step forward. It said October, November, his field goal percentage was 37.6, and he was shooting under 25% from 3. And he's gotten his field goal percentage up to 46%, and he's now shooting 45.5% from 3s in December. So he's been putting in work in the gym, so that's good on him, or just getting hot in the month of December and starting to get comfortable within the NBA game, I think is probably the biggest part of it.
And I guess that brings us to number 1.
Yes, indeed. And the second New Orleans Pelican, and Yves Nisi. I caught myself. He's one of those. He's this long, offensive kind of powerhouse. And every time that I've been able to catch him on screen, and I'm usually watching like the NBA stats, and his stats are like jump out at me. And it was just one of those, the first time when I was like, what name is this? I had to like go and look it up. I'm like, Nisi, who is this guy? And realizing that he's a rookie, and man, another one of those that kind of jumps off the screen. He's obviously getting a lot of playing time with all the Pelicans being hurt, but yeah, he is another young stud that's fun to watch.
Yeah, he's much like Alex Sarr. I mean, it's the same comment of just like for his size, he's incredibly athletic, moves around very, very well. He's the limited Pelican minutes that I have seen, he is a very active defender and wreaks a lot of havoc. He doesn't make it easy for teams to just completely overcome and destroy them, even though they are a lower seeded team, not expected to win these games, and probably ownership doesn't even want them to win these games. But yeah, he doesn't make it for easy for any of the competitors that they're facing, at least recently.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is the Kia rookie ladder on NBA.com. There's a Ron Harper Jr.
Yeah, he's
on the main Celtic.
Oh, really? How old is he?
I don't know, at 34 minutes and 17 points.
I thought Ron Harper Jr. was like 17 years old. Oh, he's older than that. Well, then, who else is
2000. All these guys were born in 2000.
Dylan Harper? Dylan Harper's the one that's going to be like he's
Oh.
projected to be like a really high draft pick.
Yeah, I heard that name.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's 18, and he's being seen as like one of the potential, I think, number one picks. But he's the younger sibling of Ron Harper's kids, which that tends to be how it goes. Is the the youngest is the one who reaps all the benefits of high level competition throughout their entire life, and so they just end up being the best.
Speaking of, Bryce James has declared he is going to the University of Arizona, and that just got announced today. So we will make sure that this is all in there. I'm tying this up with a bow because that was a perfect lead-in.
Nice. Well done. Well, good for University of Arizona. They're about to be able to sell those tickets for whatever they want.
Yep. Imagine if LeBron could somehow manage to get him drafted next year, and he's on the court with his two sons.
No,
we know he's going to try.
I like. Do you think if LeBron? I don't foresee it happening, but like, if his double digit scoring streak comes to an end, do you think he just retires at that point? Not like that game, but like at the end of the season.
No.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, like he scored 10 points in however many games.
Yeah, like it's been like thousands. At this point.
Do you think Steph's going to retire this year after his 2-point game?
Well, no, but Steph has had a handful of games like that over his career because he's
LeBron
he's a
just said
shooter,
this,
and so
he just said this week after his birthday, happy birthday, LeBron, December 30th. He just said that he thinks he could play another 5 to 7 years. I could see him being on that list at 45 that we mentioned before. I think he wants every stat. He's going to score 4 points at age 45 and top that list.
I question it because I feel like he he kind of seconds like something MJ has said figuratively anyway of like I'm not, people aren't going to pull me off the court. I'm walking off on my own terms. And he was talking about Patrick Ewing. He's like, people are going to have to pry me off the court before I quit or before I retire. But I don't think Brown's going to do that to himself. I don't think he wants to be out there like just being like the veteran guy on the bench,
I'll say this: if he can't dunk, then yeah, he retires. But I don't. Granted, I think Jordan can still dunk, so maybe that's not the best analogy. But like an in-game,
could Jordan dunk it in an NBA game? Yeah, he couldn't dunk in an NBA game at this point.
In an in-game dunk. So, I think there's LeBron looks amazing for being 40 and to be able to move and to be as big and to be as dominant as he is amazing. But again, we already went off on MJ. We don't need to go off on LeBron. But yeah, that's right. We can get into risers and fallers.
We should. All right, and for our next segment, we're gonna do our top risers and fallers. There's gonna be some really loose parameters on this. I think we're each gonna pick two, just to hopefully consolidate it, because otherwise we're just gonna ramble, which I'm sure we're gonna do anyway. And the premise of this is to pick our two favorite teams that we think are on the rise, and two favorite teams that are least favorite teams that we feel like are on the decline. And I kind of left the interpretation of this fairly open. The way I premised it was using current and recent data to sort of pick what team that you think is excelling and going to continue to excel for the rest of the season, or you can even go as far back as to say like teams that are surprising you this season altogether, who you think are either punching above or below their weight class to start things thus far. So, do you want to start with fallers or risers?
Let's do some risers.
All
Start
right, start
positive.
with the good news. Yeah, let's start with the good news. All right, who is your favorite riser this year?
So my favorite riser, we've mentioned them before. They're one that's they've beaten the Cavs twice. I believe they've beaten the Celtics, but they've also lost to the Wizards. But they're a really fun team to watch. They've got a lot of great players. They didn't. I'm looking at this. They didn't make the final 8 of the Eastern Conference playoffs last year. My rising team is the Atlanta Hawks. I really like what they've got together. I feel like they're moving up the standings right now. They got them? They are in the 7th spot. I see them right in there, probably towards the end of the year. Obviously, we've mentioned him a bunch, and probably one of my favorite nicknames to mention, the Great Barrier Thief, Dyson Daniels. Actually, being able to watch him, I think it was maybe right before our last episode. Really got to watch him against the Timberwolves and kind of get in and see what he was all about. And man, oh man, he is unbelievable. Just the creating steals, and deflected passes. And then they've got so many other guys that it seems like they all kind of know their role, and they're kind of trying to understand how to maximize their potential and get it all together. So my biggest riser is the Atlanta Hawks, and I just see them really pulling it together, and I'm excited to see what they got here in 2025.
That's a really good one. Before, for the listeners who don't know, I said I'll work around you to see who you pick first, and that for sure would have been one of mine if you hadn't said them. Just because they are becoming more and more fun to watch. The Hawks notoriously have been a team for me that have been tough to stomach. I think in part just because Trae Young's like super high usage type style hasn't always sat well with me. With how inefficient it could be,
Right.
but this year, I mean, he's just got like the perfect team around him. They just seem to have like an endless supply of guys who are big, long, very active, strong, stout for their position, athletic. And I mean, Jalen Johnson's obviously been on the rise, and everybody's had their eye on him, and he's popping. He's meeting / exceeding expectations for this season. Same thing with Dyson Daniels, as you mentioned. So defensively, they can be really pesky. And then another name that we've mentioned already this episode, Zachary Rizachet, he's playing really, really well for a rookie, especially around Trae. I think this is kind of like the ideal position for him as a rookie. He doesn't have to do too much on ball right now, and he's sliding in very, very nicely. I mean, I still think that they're a little bit weak at the center position. Clint Capella isn't quite the guy he used to be, which is crazy because he isn't that old. I mean, he's really. I honestly don't even know if he's on the other side of 30 yet. And then they tend to have like Onyeka Okongwu as their backup center, who's a little undersized, but a player I actually really like a lot. I think he's a lot of fun to watch. But yeah, solid team. I genuinely think, just based on what I've seen so far, based on the sample size that we have, that they are in fact going to make the playoffs. And I think they can make a lot of noise.
Clint Capella's 30, so you.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So am I picking my second one, or are you picking one? Are we going back and forth? I would love to take mine because that would put you in a really awkward position.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's do that then. Yeah. Make it difficult for me.
Good.
All right, let's do it.
Because I'm taking the other obvious pick, and that's the Cavaliers. My goodness, are they the riser this year by far? And we've mentioned it before. Let's hit the button. Evan Mobley has been playing amazing. One person that I want
to say, the Evan Mobley hoghorn, yeah.
Yeah.
Or ham horn, sorry, ham horn.
The person who I think needs to get his due because he is the highlight reel of this team. Jared Allen, my goodness. Being a Vikings fan, Jared Allen is a special name to me. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, "Ooh, who is this?" And then seeing him do the dunks that he's doing, this guy, he's long, big, and he jumps out of the gym. And seeing some of the alley oops that they are throwing up to him, it is unbelievable. But yeah, this Cavs team, my goodness, Donovan Mitchell uh, and Darius, they're back. Just being able to play off of each other has been just amazing. And to me, it's their rise. To me, like you're watching the team and they can play like any style, and that's I think is the key to surviving the regular season is to be able to handle all the different kinds of styles of basketball that you're going to play, big guys, small, and they're able to kind of be versatile against anybody. So yeah, I have to pick the Cavs as my second riser, and kind of hopefully cherry pick some of the better ones and force you into kind of figuring out who you're going to choose.
That's okay. I mean, the Cavs were obviously, or they are very obvious rather, and so I was going to steer away from them. I mean, they're 29-4 right now. We don't have to go too much into the Cavs. I feel like every episode we end up talking about them for good reason, just because they're playing absolutely amazing ball this year. They have had one of the lighter schedules thus far, and so it does make it a little bit tough to fully evaluate them. I mean, looking at their schedule moving forward, they are going to play OKC twice this month. Their next game against Dallas in a couple days. Granted, I mean, that said, though, they have had some decent wins lately against Milwaukee, Golden State, Denver. I guess they're not beating up on all bad teams anyway. So it is kind of interesting that the Hawks are like their Achilles heel, but yeah, otherwise nothing but good things to say about this team. I wouldn't be surprised if they're a mid to high 60s win team. And at this point, I'm even willing to put them in like that upper tier of a team that I wouldn't be surprised, or even better said, expect them to be, Eastern Conference Finals or even Finals this year for sure. So I guess that means I go, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm gonna have to try to space it out on these next ones, but I'm gonna stay east here and go just a couple ranks down the standings in the East and pick the Knicks, who started out a little flat this year and have since just really come into their own. They've won their last 9. They are historically one of the best offenses ever. I don't know that I would, if we're like to truly rank them, they're kind of like neck and neck in terms of offense with like the Cavs and maybe some elements being shared there with the Celtics, but yeah, they are absolutely unbelievable. I mean, defensively, I think they show quite a bit of what they could do on the perimeter. Obviously, around the rim, that's been a topic of discussion all year, especially with Karl Anthony Towns. But speaking of, even if his numbers around the rim on defense aren't that great, this is like the best version of Karl Anthony Towns we've ever seen. I know you put him on your mock MVP ladder earlier, and I was kind of giving you some flack for that, only because if you're going to pick somebody on the Knicks, I mean, you have to go with Jalen Brunson, but because he is the star, he is the son of that offense. All right, that offense doesn't exist without Jalen Brunson carrying a massive load every single night.
Cat might make it shine.
He does, though. He does. No. I mean, even just like Cat's willingness to put the ball on the floor and attack the hoop. I see him do that at least once every Knicks game I've seen, and it always impresses me. He'll do it against high end defensive centers as well. So
I'm laughing because you're saying you see him do that one time a game, while I'm over here watching Julius Randle do it like 6, 7, 8 times a game, where he's ISOing himself and dribbling 4 times in the corner to pass it. To go on.
Yeah, but not always particularly efficiently. And and to Julius Randle's credit, that's he's not existing in the highest level offense in the league like Karl Anthony Towns is right now. So it's a little bit different. But I said at the beginning of the year, win or lose, I was going to be keeping my eye on and riding this team all year long, just because I have really, really high hopes for them, and they are producing. We mentioned the Cavs as being Eastern Conference finalist, maybe finalist. I'm going to put the Knicks like right there. Maybe not quite as high, just because there's some depth issues that we have to worry about. This team, I just feel like the sky's the limit for them right now, and they're hitting in year one already, and they're locked into all their big guys are locked into con. Well, I guess Mikal Bridges, I think, has
to me, like you said, this offense is their offense is clicking. Seeing the other end of the trade and seeing their two decent pieces still not fitting in with Minnesota and like our offensive rate. Like I looked at one thing, like we're one of the top defensive efficient teams, and our offensive numbers have gotten worse. Sorry, you threw me off. I thought you were stopping me.
I don't want the computer to die while we're talking, but yeah. No, I mean, I certainly don't think it was a bad trade for Minnesota. I think for Minnesota, it was more of a let's look to the future. Maybe if it doesn't hit this year, there's a lot more for us to gain, the following year and then thereafter. Versus the Knicks, it's like, I mean, it's not like they have like just like a 1 year window. They have a multi-year window, but like this is the team, and they're not going to be able to make many moves, if any, like moving forward. Whereas the Timberwolves, it was really more about creating flexibility for the future. So I wouldn't be too upset about it, and they're still relevant. So it's not even like they're hurting that bad.
I think it's going to take some time for them to get this cohesion going and finding an offensive identity, because they lost Cat, because of his versatility and his ability to. We lost a big shooting, passing big man. Like we were stuck with a Gobert. Like that. Yeah. He's not
in today's NBA. That's kind of a big deal. I don't know if anybody's been paying attention, but that is kind of a big deal. I know Cat's not like the perfect player, but
he fits. He was able to run the offense much more efficiently than Julius Randle. But they're two different positions, so I can't compare them because Randall's a 4, Cat's a 5. And so and so that's the thing. It's how does this fit? How do they kind of go from there? So for me, it's no surprise that Cat has fit so well into this offense, because he is an unselfish player, but also looks to get his shot. So it's his ability to fit in with other guys that are of similar mindset and to work with a coach that he knows before too. So it's not like he's jumping into a brand new offensive or defensive playbook that he has to get in and relearn everything. So I think that benefits him too. And that's probably what's making this transition much faster than the Minnesota transition. But yeah, the Knicks are looking great.
Well, I guess that means we got to jump into my next riser. Before I pick my next one, I feel like we should mention some honorable mentions maybe at the end of this, just because we're gonna inevitably leave out like a ton of teams that deserve to be mentioned. But
it just means that we're gonna ramble about a bunch of teams later on, so we need to kind of keep ourselves tight in here. Keep it tight.
No. Let's.
We're talking about 8 teams. Like, so what if we're letting off the other 22 off the hook for right now?
All right. So my riser here is I'm gonna have to go with the Houston Rockets. I mean, during one of our very, very early podcasts, you don't have to listen to it; just take my word for it.
Please listen to it. We need the views and listens.
That's fine. That's fine. At least for a second. But when I was doing all my over unders, or really just my overs, at the beginning of the year. I picked the Rockets, who went exactly 500 last year, and they currently sit third in the West, with almost twice as many wins as they do losses at 21-11. And I mean they are kind of just like firing on all cylinders, about as well as I would have hoped for them this year. Obviously, it's their defense leading the way, and it helps that they just have like a lot of young, athletic, workhorse type guys. I mean, they're currently second defensive rating now, kind of a very, very long leap away from Oklahoma City Thunder, which is who I think about, by the way, when I'm thinking about the honorable mentions. It's like, how do we go through these risers without mentioning OKC? I'm kind of, I guess the premise of these teams that we're picking is a little bit more based on like who is beating expectations. I expected OKC to be here all the way through, so that's why we're not mentioning them, or like the Celtics, or that's why we're focusing on just a few teams.
If you're
But
going to give an
anyway,
honorable mention, it would be the Grizzlies, who are just right
well,
under
that
the
would be the
Rockets.
other one too. Yeah, that would be another one too. So sorry to fans of those squads that we're not mentioning them. Although again, the Grizzlies, I said going
We
into the
expect them.
season, like
They're healthy. That's where I expect them to be.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like when it comes to the Rockets, like the one big thing that's missing is like who's the guy, who's the superstar of that team, and that's not quite established yet. I mean, looking at their lineup, is it going to be Şengün? Not necessarily. I feel like we're seeing like sort of like a Domantas Sabonis 2.0, maybe even like a slightly better defending version of him, who's got a little bit more dream shake around the hoop than he does. So, but it's just like not a guy who you project to be like. I think of him as more of like a Sabonis replica than a Jokic replica.
Yeah, no,
right?
that's a great comp. Yeah, the last game I saw him play, he was doing amazing. But that was the big question: was like, who's their star? Because sadly, but however it may come across to your mind, that the biggest name that anybody sees when looking at the roster is Dylan Brooks. So, like, that's their face of their team. But that's good because they're a defensive, gritty team. And so they're playing like him, and that's good. Maybe not offensively in certain ways, but it seems like they're doing just fine, scoring 112 points a game. Not the holy cow, but 123 by the Grizzlies. But yeah, they're doing just fine.
Yeah. Anyway, but they are a very fun team to watch. Certainly recommend that you tune in. I'm hoping that as time goes on, it's going to be kind of curious to see what they're going to have to do with this roster, because I feel like it's only a matter of time before Cam Whitmore starts to hit. We hope that Reed Shepherd starts to hit. He's not getting a lot of playing time this year, and just because of the amount of depth that they have. But it's a good problem to have, but eventually you have to start making choices. You have to start making cuts. So I do wonder if they can aggregate some of these players and make a really big move. It's not outside the Rockets to do something like that. They don't shy away from blockbuster trades, and they certainly have the assets to do it. So I'd be curious to see if and when they pull that trigger on trying to get a big name to come over and sort of really help solidify that team. But they top my list here, which then brings us to who are your fallers? Who are the active current or based on projections, just like teams that are really disappointing you right now and who you aren't very hopeful for perhaps as the season goes on?
Do you want me to give you both of them, or do you want one at a time?
We can go back and forth. It's whatever. If you want to try to spoil my picks again, we can go both of yours first, and then you get to watch me scramble. That's totally okay.
I don't think I'm stealing both of them. I think one is fairly obvious, at least for me, the Pelicans. It's also because of injuries. It's just unfortunate that they just kind of started slow, got some injuries, just what to do with Zion. Like, I think the continuing conundrum that he is of, do you trade him? Do you try to keep him and hope that he can have a healthy year? So yeah, not that I really had too high of expectations. I think I would have them probably sniffing at the play-in as far as being like a best case scenario for this team. Maybe when they started the season, I might have to go back and listen to our over-unders and see if we actually did anything on the Pelicans and my thoughts back then, just because I think Brandon Ingram had a good start to the season, but I think they're, like we've mentioned before, it's like if you only have these two guys and those are your two creators and you have a bunch of floor spacers, and what are you going to do after that? Hold on. Can you hear me?
Yeah. No, yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. This team is disappointing for the wrong reasons, and by wrong, I mean unfortunate reasons, where it's, there's certain things that are just sort of out of their control at this point. I want to second what you're saying about the Zion conundrum, where, should you really be at this point? Do you just shop for any Zion takers, and what are you willing? How low are you willing to sell on him? Just because, I mean, I guess he still has plenty of time left on the contract, but
What's his ceiling? Like, what is his
I
real
guess.
ceiling?
Yeah, and I'm kind of stealing this from another podcast I was listening to, but it was a good point. I believe it was dunked on about how, just a comment on Zion's game. You haven't really seen a lot of progression. A couple seasons ago, everybody loved talking about how he's like the most efficient scorer since Shaq, with his points around the basket, and those numbers have only actually dipped gradually. And I do realize that if you're injured all the time, you're not going to be conditioning, so at least well enough to show progress. So that does make it kind of tough. But then you do wonder, you almost question his work ethic a little bit to go with it too. So how much of this is just things that are out of his control versus his motivation to get himself back in the game, not just healthy, but truly like fill the big shoes that we expect him to at this point. I was actually listening back to our episode maybe a couple ago, where you were talking about the Pelicans, and you said there's 3 players that's on their do not trade list, and you were saying that Zion, Ingram, and McCollum were not on that list. And I think I actually, for anybody who was paying attention, I think you could kind of tell that I misunderstood you and thought that maybe that was their do not trade list. So I actually had it opposite as you were saying it in real time. But going back, it makes way more sense, because I mean, McCollum, aging player, not a two-way guy. He works well for being like the veteran presence on a young roster.
Yeah, he's like a slightly better Kyle Lowry, who started.
I'd give him a little bit more of a nod than that,
Yeah.
but maybe not defensively anyway. But yeah, I mean, but obviously long term, he wasn't a player that the Pels were hoping to hang on to and develop like they were with the other guys. But and Ingram obviously has been in trade talks forever. But I guess the surprising one that's come up and seems like, honestly, like a no-brainer at this point is Zion. And I will say he's actually on a tradable contract, because he has a lot of non-guarantees in his contract based on playing, based on like the amount of games that he actually plays. So I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's quite a bit of a pay deduction that he'll take if he can't get himself back on the floor. So that might actually be somewhat lucrative to other teams who are willing to take a chance. I honestly think at this point, the Pelicans, they might even have to like give up like a pick. Yeah, give up a pick just to get off the contract at this point, which is sad. It's really sad to say. So Yeah, I mean, there's virtually no hope in them outside of tanking at this point in the season, which is too bad, just because they do have a lot of great young talent. And I mean, I don't know if you remember, but they were a solid 5 or 6 seed for a very lengthy portion of the regular season last year. They eventually slipped to the play-in just because there was like 7 teams that were separated by half a game, and so um, and you know, if Zion didn't get hurt in that playing game, they very well could have been a, you know, a team that made some waves in the first round, but unfortunately they just really haven't had their shot, and it doesn't look like it's coming anytime soon at this point. All right, sorry, I went on. That was your pick, and I talked about the Pels for a very long time, but it's an interesting topic. It really is. Yeah, it's a
we'll
very it
see.
is for a last place team. They're an interesting topic.
So my other team I foreshadowed a little bit earlier is one that is in every game, it seems like. Obviously, their point differential doesn't show that. Is the Toronto Raptors. I feel they're another one of those teams that we've mentioned before. They have a lot of good pieces, but not a true number one. Right now, it's RJ Barrett is essentially what I've seen is kind of like the guy at the end of the game that usually creates his own shot. Obviously, we've got everyone's favorite Grady Dick, who's definitely been an offensive kind of juggernaut this year. I think he's kind of come into his own. I know he's been around, but I think he's definitely starting to feel it and feeling like he has the green light to shoot whenever he kind of wants to is kind of what it seems like. But maybe that's not the best of things. I know they've had a few injuries and stuff, guys in and out of the lineup. It doesn't seem like they've been super consistent. So that might be what's contributing to them. And I honestly haven't given them a lot of watch time, but it seems like like I mentioned, the times that I do watch, they're in the game. It seems like they're close, at least up until the end. And then it usually falls apart for them. So that's not that they had really too high of expectations. It's just, again, one of those where I see them, they're sitting at 8 wins. They got the Hornets and the Wizards below them. And I don't really see them going up by any means. Obviously, the Nets are above them, and we've talked about them at length about kind of their transitional phase right now. So I think the Raptors are one of those. I think they're probably going to continue to kind of hover unless they make some moves at the trade deadline, but I don't see them going much higher in the East, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly don't have too much to say about the Raptors at this point, other than, you know, I mean, I want to see more Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel Quickly together on the floor, and you know, I want to. You mentioned them getting involved in trades. For me, they're a team that is likely someone we're going to talk about more in the offseason and not very much at all this season. So I do foresee perhaps us talking about them more optimistically going into next year. But yeah, for now, I'm putting the Raptors on a shelf. I wish nothing but the best for Scotty Barnes and the gang, but yeah, you're right. Can be a little bit of a frisky team, not always an easy win. But that's about all I have to say. Yeah, so I guess it's who are my fallers, and I'm gonna be a little bit more spirited about this. You know, I'm not gonna go for bottom of the standing teams. You know, the Hornets I feel like are too easy. That's kind of like Pelicans East. Just a mess over there. I mean, I feel like with the Sixers, I could have gone either way on that one, a riser or a faller. I would pick them as a riser just because they've won 4 in a row, and Embiid's starting to look healthy, and yeah, they look like they can do some damage when everybody's out there.
8-2 in their last 10.
There you go. And so I think I'm going to stay out west for both of these. And my first one is going to be the Golden State Warriors. who started out as I don't know what their best. Yeah, they were a 2 seed for a little bit, and I don't know what their best record was off the top of my head, but they have since gone on a heck of a skid for the second portion of their season thus far. Um, you know, I don't think D'Anthony Melton is the reason that this team was both extremely successful and now currently unsuccessful. It's obviously a lot deeper than that. I was giving them a ton of credit just for the way that they came out so hot, the way that they were playing classic Warriors basketball. The beautiful game, moving the ball around so well, and I mean, being a top defensive team on top of it. And shortly after that, they gave up two of the highest scoring games that we've seen this year to the Mavs, and I can't remember the other one, maybe the Grizzlies, I think, back to back games that, especially the one against the Mavs, where if they didn't have an amazing offensive game themselves with a lot of shooting luck, they would have just gotten completely blown out. They ended up making it competitive, but barely. Steph obviously has his moments, but he's kind of, I think, perhaps reaching a part in his career where he is looking guardable. He still carries like a ton of gravity. He is still a guy that you never want to leave open. I mean, I think his release may maybe just as quick, if not quicker, than it was when he was younger. But yeah, I mean, as we watch him and Draymond age, the chemistry is there, the IQ is there, but there's just a little bit of magic missing in that cap, and it's I just don't see a way that this offense turns around. I mean, it's like Steph, if he turns on the Jets, he can be an efficient 30-point scorer, but I don't think he could do it every night anymore. And if he's not, then I mean, heck, even if on days he is, it's like the Warriors still are barely squeaking out these wins. It's they're putting themselves into these like crunch time, like clutch moments over and over again. Steph may win. I mean, he may legitimately win that award again just because of how many minutes they're getting in close game situations where they should have otherwise pulled away. And it hurts. They are currently 10th in the standings as we're talking, just one game above the Phoenix Suns. And yeah, I'm my hopes are not super high on unless some of their players start to pop again. My hopes are not high on them being like a true contending playoff team.
Yeah, I want to say what's the cliche question to ask is, would this team be better if Clay was still on it, or was this new mashup be a better suited for this next step in Steph's like career and the way that it's going? I think that's the question to ask. Is that something that breaking up this chemistry, is this something, and granted it's still early and they're still in a play-in spot, which I feel were they in the play-in tournament last year, so I think they got knocked out. So it's curious. They're definitely one that's I look at that they were 3-7 in the last 10, and unfortunately one of their wins is, well, to me it's funny, like from my view, I'm like, how are they dropping? Like, they just played a really good game against the Wolves. I think I saw them play against somebody else and had at least a decent game, or at least what I was watching, they were leading. So to me, it's definitely surprising that to kind of see this drop in this last like 15 games, that they've just kind of free falling here. And it seems like Steve Kerr had called out a lot of the players. I think people were pointing at Kuminga, thinking that he was calling him out for a few actions and stuff. So the coach is trying to shake things up. The players are trying to figure it out. So something's going on, and we'll see kind of how this goes. But yeah, the Warriors are definitely one I would would agree.
Well, no,
That makes sense.
I'm actually glad you mentioned Kuminga, just because he's one of their like sort of like going into the season like almost like a hopeful rising star, a player who you would think, oh, maybe they're going to be the most improved player this year. But as you're kind of watching the season go on, and you see that like he is a freak athlete. There's no question about it. The way he gets to the rim, he makes it look so easy, but he's not always going to finish once he's close to the basket, and his shot's not really getting any better. You see him miss like a lot of like defensive switches, and I honestly think that's part of the Warriors' defensive downfalls is they're just getting beat a lot on switches. They're too easy to create a mismatch on, and yeah. I mean,
Especially if you
unless they're
switch
like
everything.
playing with like yeah, and if they're playing with like unless they're playing with like playoff intensity, it's just not there for them most nights. So sorry, we don't have to talk on the Warriors too much more. I know I got one more pick to make here, and with that, I'm going to go just a little bit further up the standings. This one may come as a surprise to you. This is another one of my favorite teams to watch, or has at least one of my favorite players to watch, and that's the Denver Nuggets. So basically, the Nuggets can be summed up in just like one core concept, and it's that when Jokic is on the floor, their offense is essentially league best. And when he's off the floor, their offense is essentially league worst. And I believe that's true for total net rating as well. Again, I don't have the numbers in front of me, obviously, but Jokic on the floor is playing MVP level basketball once again, and he basically, like, a lot of their wins sort of in like Steph Curry fashion. It's like if he's not just like grinding down the stretch and giving you this 40, 16, 12 triple double, like they're barely squeaking out wins, I feel like, against teams that should be lesser than them. I am a little bit surprised at how well the Westbrook minutes are going with Jokic on the floor. And it's funny when you look at like net rating for individual players. Guys like Christian Braun will be up there just because of the amount of minutes that they play next to Jokic. So he really just like raises the floor of that team so much. But I mean, how many wins can you possibly rely on in a season for something like that? They're definitely one of those teams where, like, if they don't make a move soon, preferably this season, but it's like how many seasons of Jokic's are you going to waste when he's playing this well? So yeah, I consider them to be, even though they sit fifth in the West currently,
On a
won their
3-game
past
win
two.
streak, I got to call you out on
Yeah.
this one. You're calling them a faller, but I understand it's the expectations.
Yeah.
I guess
So again, with in the spirit of the conversation, I'm using sort of like the broad interpretation to include like what I would have expected out of this team going into the season versus where I see them now, and just the likelihood that they're going to be at the top of the West. I mean, I could very much see this team like having a few bad stretch of games like later in the season, just like very untimely bad stretch of games, and then falling from like 6 to 8, or 6 to 10. It can happen in the West very, very easily. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're messing with that cusp of a playoff spot, which is
no. I think
disappointing for a team that won a chip 2 years ago and have like almost the same core. It's yeah.
what I was saying on the Nuggets, though, even with them kind of having fallen in the standings a little bit to our expectations of where we think a Jokic-led team should be, they've won the last 3. I apologize to Russell. I didn't mention it in the fast break news. He joined the perfect triple-double club with Jokic and Sabonis this past week, where he put up a perfect triple-double in a game. He is now starting for the Nuggets, and they've kind of gone on this win streak with him starting the game. So me, who usually is poking holes at Russell Westbrook and James Harden's games, um, just because. To me,
Mhm.
he's showing that he's actually like his minutes, like you said, it's been a kind of a journey here this early part of the season to kind of figure out how these two superstars, I guess, one and a half. I don't know if Russell's still a superstar, but these two big personalities, these two big ball, I wouldn't say ball dominant, but like guys that are going to have their ball in their hands and how they're going to work together. And at least over these last few games where they've started to get some chemistry going, it seems to be working. Um, as much as I wish it doesn't, because I don't want to see Jokic, even though they took him out last year. But yeah, I think the Nuggets are that it's a curious case. I gotta put a little poke of holes in you picking them as a faller. But yeah, they're at a 4 instead of a 2. I get that qualifies.
Yeah, and that is just to say that they're making me nervous. They're making me nervous. Like how good Jokic has to be for this team to be winning. I question the sustainability of it. Is all.
I get that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Those are your risers and fallers here on the first day of 2025. It's time for some trivia brought to you by T4 Medical. And so tonight, I've got two trivia questions for you. We're going to go through them quick. If you don't get an answer, if you don't get it right, I'm going to give you the list. But if you get one right, then we'll keep going. So I'm going to give you a choice. Do you want one about dunks or about money?
Ooh, let's start with dunks first.
All right. So this is this one. We're going to see. I hope you don't get this one wrong. So this is of all time as of whenever this was posted. So as of probably within the last week, I don't have up to date, but this is pretty good. The top 10 dunkers of all time. Can you name them?
Well, Shaq's gonna do number one.
Shaq is number 2.
He is. Is Giannis number one?
Giannis is number 7.
Okay, yeah, he hasn't played long enough. Who's gonna beat Shaq at the one spot? I mean,
You're still
so
going. This is still on you.
I,
You've got 2 right.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of big men on this list. I'm gonna guess Michael Jordan. Is Michael Jordan on this list?
Michael Jordan is not on this list.
Okay.
So you're out.
Oh. Who would the other ones be? Gosh, Clint Capella, would he make the list?
Nope. So number 10.
Just go for it.
Number 10 is one that I've actually met this guy and I've played basketball on the same court with him. The Matrix, Sean Marion is number 10. I did a lot of those alley-oops in Phoenix. Number 9, you heard this name at the beginning when we started all of this. Andre Iguodala is number 9. Number 8 is Amari Stoudemire. Number 7 is Giannis. Number 6, I was surprised by this one, Rudy Gobert.
Oh, nice.
Number 5, Tyson Chandler. Plenty of dunks. Phoenix, New York. Number 4 is Mr. LeBron James. King James is at number 4.
I don't know why that didn't just come to my head immediately.
The one I'm most surprised about is the name that makes this list at number 3 and not his teammate. Is DeAndre Jordan makes this. I was expecting to see Blake Griffin on this list. Shaq is number 2. Number 1, Dwight Howard.
Oh, gosh, I knew that. I knew that. I feel like I've seen this list before. I've heard this list before. So I'm a little upset that I wasn't able to get there.
Well, you got 2, so that's all right. You got Shaq and Giannis. That's all right. All right, so my next trivia question. This one's a tricky one. We'll see. The top 5 most fined players in NBA history.
And this is like total amount of money they've
Total,
been
yeah,
fined.
total amount of fines that they have accumulated by the NBA.
Draymond.
Draymond is number 3, and he has been fined $994,000.
Wow.
And those have basically just been on like technical fouls.
He's only number 3.
He's number 3.
Hmm.
I will tell you this, if this triggers anything in your mind, the person who was asked this question was Matt Barnes, and he was at number like 7 with $500,000.
Now, why would you bring that up? I'm not going to do well on this one. The only thing is, like, I can think of some players, but I'm worried that they hadn't played recent enough for the money part to have racked up. Because like Dennis Rodman comes to mind, Ron Artest comes to mind, but I just don't know. Yeah, that the fines were big enough at that time for them to have made this list. So
I'll give you
I
one
think you're
last
just
guess.
okay. Give me one more
For
guess.
one of them on the list. Yeah, you got the other 4.
I almost feel like it's gonna be just like a really well played player who feels like they can say what they want after like during press conferences.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's one of the things. Yeah, that's how I see
and
number 2 as.
it's it's not gonna be it's not Ant Edwards, is it?
No, he's definitely. I think he's collected a bunch this season. That's for sure. I
Yeah,
think
he
he's
just got
still.
fined I think 100,000
I
for
think
for the one interview he
he's
had.
he's over. It's like 225 for this season so far.
So that wasn't a
So
bad guess then.
no, no. So number 5 is CP3 with $816,000 in
Oh,
fine.
sure, yeah, yeah.
Number 4 is Serge Ibaka with 980,000,
I would
and
never
then
have
it was
guessed that.
Draymond just under 1 million, and then it skyrockets. So number 2 is Kyrie Irving, who's been fined $15 million, and number
Oh, you
one.
know why? Okay, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Do you want to take a guess at number 1 now? Because it might have helped you readjust of why people were getting fined.
Is it Ben Simmons?
It is Ben Simmons, 17
Okay.
million.
Yeah. Yeah, that would
So
I mean that's kind of like a I would almost like to see the list without that, like those particular situations where they were getting fined. I mean, obviously their contracts were very expensive, and they were getting fined on a per game basis, just based on missing games because of the vaccine dilemma. Um, but yeah, that I do feel like it's a little bit skewed. If you like take the like Draymond is like the obvious number one for guys who are getting fined based on what they've done
on
from
court. Yeah.
yeah versus from not playing.
Yeah. So yeah. So that's your trivia brought to you by T4 Medical.
Well, Ronnie, you stumped me once again, making making me look like I don't follow the NBA at all. Um,
I just find
those are some good questions, but
Yeah. Just find the random ones and make sure that everybody tunes in next time. I'm going to find another good one to stump you on. So don't you worry about that.
thanks for listening to us again. Please feel free to comment, share, let us know what you guys think, and
Yeah.
yeah, hope to see you guys next time. Sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, you're good. I need to make sure I check out our YouTube. We got YouTube Shorts. Watch our full content there. We're going to have stuff on TikTok. And we're working our way on a bunch of different other platforms. So make sure you go and check all of that stuff out. This has all been brought to you by Gale Force Studios. So they are providing everything for the Bucket Bros. So yeah, we thank you guys all for listening. We hope you get out there, watch your basketball, give us some questions and comments. We want to hear what you guys are thinking about. What do you guys want us to talk about? So we will see you next time on the Bucket Bros.